got Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom on the phone line right now. I'm going to go right to that. Hello, you're on the air.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Awesome. So my husband Peter is the question man, and I'll be pitching in my little 2 cents here along the way as necessary.
Fabulous.
Okay. Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm well. Good morning to you.
Good. I'm being sincere when I say this. Very impressed that a person of your status actually is calling our lovely little show here in Lake County.
Hardly. I'm proud. I mean, I'm kind of in the area. I've got a couple wineries up in Napa, and I've spent probably a disproportionate amount of my life in northern part of the state with my father, and probably, I mean, I'm not just patronizing you. There are few more beautiful places in the world.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Where you guys work.
Yeah.
We have been all over the world, sir, and this is where we want to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. The word work though is very misleading for us. But anyway, so yeah, I did. I'm new to California. I've only been here a couple of years. My wife's been here a little bit longer than I, and so I did some nice research on you. And you are obviously a very successful business person. I think I heard you own like 60, at some point had 16 or 17 businesses going on, including some wineries and some restaurants, and that's kind of cool. I like restaurants. So anyway, my first question is, and it sounds like a silly question, but what is the role of a lieutenant governor?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I sort of mocked myself during the campaign, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, saying, what the heck does a lieutenant governor do?
I mean, is it like a vice president?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. In fact, interestingly, I'll be seeing the vice president today. He's in town, so we can compare notes about our love for the TV show, which is just, anyway. But it's, it's interesting. When the governor's out of the country or out of the state, you have sort of the executive authority that's vested in the governor, that's vested in you. Beyond that, there's an old joke about the lieutenant governor, and John Kerry used to say this when he was lieutenant governor out there in Massachusetts. He said the primary role of the lieutenant governor is to wake up every morning and pick up the paper, go to the obituary section and see if the governor's name appears. Of course, if it doesn't, you go back to sleep.
I love that.
Oh, I like that.
But that's the self-deprecating side. The truth is, I chair the State Lands Commission in California every other year, which is a big deal. It's a 3-member commission. So anybody that's concerned about any state rights issues related to oil extraction on or off the coast, issues of restoration of our rivers, water-related issues, even fracking issues, that is a very, very important agency which the Lieutenant Governor chairs. I'm also on the UC Board of Regents and CSU Board of Trustees, so the issue of higher education is near and dear to me, and it's a perfect place for the Lieutenant Governor to be because of that role. And perhaps more important than any other, I chair the Economic Development Commission in the state. It's a 17-member commission, and what matters as it relates to issues of jobs in the economy is as an extension of your previous comment, a big part of my life. I mean, as a small business person that started out of college, opened a small wine store in San Francisco in 1991, 1992, and I'm very proud today to have 15 operating businesses, over 700 employees in the state. I operate a hotel up in Napa County and 3 wineries, a couple restaurants, and I'm very proud of that. I don't say that to impress or brag, but just to impress upon you. The issue of jobs in the economy is something I'm very, very intense and passionate about, and so the issue of the role of Lieutenant Governor is ideal from that perspective, emerging of jobs in the economy, higher education, and then the issues of environmental stewardship.
Okay. Well, since you brought the economy into play in your business background, let's talk about that for a minute. I know that you're the chairperson of this the committee on economics. I have a concern because Lake County is kind of one of those counties that kind of get pushed aside and ignored most of the time by government, and both locally and at state level. What is your plan of attack, for better choice of words, to generate our economy? Are you looking at, and again, I'm going to say this because you're part of it, are you looking at the wine industry in Northern California as the savior of our economy? Are you looking at diversification? Do you have plans to help the small business owners?
Yeah, I mean, look, the spirit of the question is spot on, and of course the specifics of your question are right on. Look, let me give you my sort of global, and then let me try to localize an answer that legitimizes the sincerity of the question. Here are a couple thoughts. California is dominantly a coastal economy in terms of where our job creation is really exploding. California's coast doing disproportionately better than the inland part of the state. It's no longer a state defined. When I was growing up, it was defined north versus south. Mm-hmm. Now it's really coastal versus inland. I think we've done a terrible job, and I say we because I'm part of the problem, and I recognize that, supporting our rural communities. We have what seems to be disproportionately an urban agenda, but we're failing rural California. And I think that's suggestive of some of the secession discussions up in the farther part of our state that have been going on, frankly, for decades. It by no means is a critique of the governor or even the current legislature. It's been a long-standing struggle for rural California to be recognized and supported and embraced. So way I answer your question and resolve that concern and take some responsibility and account is I went out and I put together a comprehensive economic development plan, the first the state has seen, honestly, in decades. I went out and hired McKinsey, the big consulting firm, and went out with the Brookings Institute to do some think tank work, and we cased other people's joints. One of the things I do in business, I think a lot of the small business people that are listening, they do the same thing, is you constantly have to be on the lookout for what your competitors are doing. And in California, we dropped the ball years ago. We started taking things for granted. And so we went out virtually and physically to states like Texas, learning about the Ohio Third Frontier program and how they were supporting with small business development grants their small business community. Went to Pennsylvania and Florida, learned about what was going on around the world, Singapore and their plug-and-play zones, a manufacturing renaissance, and Germany. And went to South Korea on my own dime to learn about some of their export strategies and put together a very comprehensive plan. And the fundamental framework, and I'll close with this, it's bottom-up plan, not a top-down plan, that any economic development strategy has to come from local community. It's what we call regions rising together. Mm-hmm. And it's framed on economic and workforce development strategies that are unique in each region in the state, from Lake County to Imperial County in the southern part of the state. And so that's the idea. It's not a one-size-fits-all. And we lay out some very prescriptive remedies that transcend one industry, but really build on existing industries, with the backbone being the small business community that's the source of all our net new jobs.
Okay, well, as you well know, as a successful business owner, that it takes money to get going. And with the state of the economy, with the financing that's not available these days, unless you know how to go through the SBA process, is there anything that you, if you get reelected as lieutenant governor, can do to provide some type of low-cost funding or grants for small business owners to be able to start new businesses, to expand their current businesses within a regional area?
Yeah, I mean, it's the right question. It's a difficult one from the state level because, to your point, we've been going through this raging debate about solvency, and we've been making some really remarkably deep cuts over the last 4 or 5 years. We're now at a point where we can at least lay claim to a balanced budget despite all our unfunded liabilities, which certainly need to be considered with regard to that. That said, it's really the county governments. I was a former mayor of a county, San Francisco, the only city county in the state, and the work at the county level to provide those grants and those small business loans. But as lieutenant governor, what I've been trying to do is bring the federal government in. As to your point about the SBA, there's also the XM Bank. One of the great opportunities, the low-hanging fruit of opportunities in this country for small businesses is to get familiar with the XM Bank, which allows for guarantees and for loans to give small businesses, even micro businesses, that person that's listening, that one-person operation, 2-3-person operation, the opportunity to export. And I know it sounds absurd because you're trying to struggle just to keep your doors open and try to sell to the person down the block, but there is a treasure trove of opportunity and access to capital and grants that the federal government provides that people are not familiar with. And I would encourage anyone that wants to challenge me with that to go on and learn more about the XM Bank. Just Google it and learn about our opportunities. I've been out there traveling the state with them. We were in Fresno and Central Valley last year. We did our first tour with the XM Bank, try to get small businesses to understand the opportunities to extend their reach to markets around the world, which now with the platform of the internet, by definition, presents itself as an opportunity that didn't exist when I opened my small business in 1991 and 1992. Beyond that, we certainly can support the SBA's efforts, and we've got a new director, as you know, at the SBA nationally, and we're trying to get her out here to California and personally introduce herself to small business leaders and organizations up and down the state to continue to promote the opportunities they provide.
Okay, the bank is called XM?
Yeah, XM. It's the Import-Export Bank. And again, even all these years when I was mayor, 7 years, as a small business person for over 20 years, I never heard of them.
No.
I'm embarrassed to say that. I never was familiar with the work they were doing. When I heard about it in Washington, D.C., I frankly thought someone was overstating it. I never thought as a small business person, again, my businesses are all 10-person operations, 20, 30, that the exports would ever make any sense for me. I'm like, I don't have products that we could ship down to Mexico or Canada. And all of a sudden, I learned more about this, and this is what this bank is really rolling out now, is supporting these micro enterprises. In Lake County, I'll tell you that the products you guys produce, the small businesses, are unique, they're special, they're distinct. And people, the number one brand in the world still is California. And you can market your brand from California, from the purity of Lake County in every respect, in terms of the environment, its air quality, its history,
right.
Its unique identity, its culture.
Right.
There's real opportunities there.
Well, we have two ideas that we've been trying to float around here for our business economy. One great business that we could build here would be a call centers, because we have a low cost of living, and we have good internet service and good telephone service and a good workforce. So that's something I think would be very easy to set up here in Lake County. Another thing is cellulosic ethanol, ethanol made from basic plant matter. Right. That the plants, to build those, the modular plants, cost about $1 million. They're a little more, and we would have all this forest debris that we could process, and not only forest debris, but the debris from the medical marijuana and all the other great debris, etc. That's an automatic fuel source. So those are two things that we're trying to advocate for here in Lake County to help the economy and jobs and that.
I love it, and we're talking a lot about in this country, sort of a national theme and meme is this notion of insourcing. In this sort of hyper-connected world, people want to be closer now to their supply chains. And having just come back last year from China, it was fascinating to me the struggle they're having now with manufacturing. It's getting very expensive along the coast in big cities like Shanghai, and now they're facing the issue of outsourcing, even in China and in places, low-cost places, in Indonesia and Vietnam and elsewhere.
Sure.
So this phenomenon is taking shape in countries around the world, and as a consequence of some of that uncertainty and those increasing costs, a lot of these big manufacturers are now looking back at the United States, again, closer to their supply chains and their customers, and call centers should be top of mind on that list. And you're absolutely right, a rural opportunity for California with high quality of life, which is distinctive in Lake County and other parts of our rural communities. The opportunity to build these call centers presents itself. The challenge for us, and this is an issue, trying to bring Tesla's new battery facility into California and not see it go to Arizona and New Mexico, Nevada, or Texas. Those are literally the 4 states we're competing against, is the uncertainty that is created in the environment, the regulatory environment we have, and the time it takes to actually get your project approved so you can build large manufacturing facilities or large call centers. We have to be honest. I'm a very progressive Democrat, as I'm sure you know, on social issues, environmental issues, but I'm also a pro-job Democrat, and I think we're going to have to find a much more, aggressive strategy to find a better balance between our desire for creating jobs and opportunities for people and our need to at least be more flexible with our regulatory environment so we can create more certainty for people to make the kind of investments in these call centers and manufacturing facilities that are required of us to compete against those other states that simply disregard in many respects or just simply don't have the kind of regulatory environment we do here in California.
We are regulatory heavy. The other industry, which is kind of already in place here in Lake County is the cannabis industry. How do you feel about that as we come closer to legalization and of course the medical use, but having an industry for the byproducts of the plant, clothing, paper, fuel, etc.?
Well, close to 20 years ago, California led in 1996, the first state to legalize medicinal marijuana. It's remarkable. I have a good friend of mine, Will Weatherford, who's the Speaker of the Florida Assembly. He's a Republican, but a great guy. And I've been giving him a lot of grief over the years, saying, when is Florida going to move towards legalizing medical marijuana? You're 18 years behind California, decades behind. They finally are moving in that direction. And I only say that to contrast California's leadership, to put it in perspective, that they're still debating medical marijuana in states like Florida, while states like Colorado and Washington, of course, have moved towards a regulatory environment, a tax environment.
Right.
But didn't the bill just move to the floor for next week for voting?
Yeah, well, that's correct. And, look, let me just quickly jump in and make this point. I came out almost a year and a half, 2 years ago, supporting the legalization, taxation, and regulation of marijuana for adults in California. I'm the only statewide elected official to do that. I think it's time to move in a completely new direction as it relates to the war on marijuana, pot, cannabis, hemp, and frankly, that matter broadly, the war on drugs. I think the consequences, direct and indirect consequences of this war on drugs, has been an abject failure. It's been a war on poor people, disproportionately, a war on people of color, disproportionately. The incarceration rates for African Americans, arrest rates themselves are almost 4 times greater for possession than for Caucasians. I think we have an obligation to reconcile that, and I think we have an obligation as well to reconcile, I'm a parent of 3, that the current system is a system where we simply have no control over the quality of the drug. Drug dealers don't card young kids. We have got to get our arms around this. We've got to be reflective and honest about this drug and its use and abuse, but at the same time, reflective and honest about the failure of this criminalization policy. And so I'm hoping, I chair a work group with the ACLU. We're hoping to inform a ballot initiative for 2016 to legalize the drug and do it in a very, very thoughtful and mature way, learning the lessons from Colorado's implementation, and soon, as you know, this summer, in fact, just in a few months, Washington's implementation.
Yeah. Aren't your views, I'll be polite, different than Governor Brown's on this issue?
I'd say you don't have to be polite. He went on, it's funny, I had a slot on Meet the Press, and I had to cancel, and he took that slot. And I say that only to make this point. They asked him specifically about a question they were going to ask me about the legalization of marijuana. I gave a very pointed speech on the war on drugs at the Democratic Convention, and the Democratic Party the next morning came out on a voice vote unanimously supporting my position, the broader position of legalization, in stark contrast to the week prior on Meet the Press, where Governor Brown referred to people that smoke pot. This whole issue is people as stoners and potheads.
Oh my God! I just couldn't believe he said that.
I thought it, and I was quite critical of that. I admire and respect the governor. He's going to be, I think, an outstanding 4th-term governor, and I look forward to working with him. But this is a real issue for me. This is not an issue that could be diminished with that kind of language. He knows better. I thought it was dismissive, and frankly, it was sort of an amateurish way of discussing a very serious issue. I mean, there are people today in the California system that have been incarcerated for years and years that cannot see their children that cannot see their father or mother except behind bars. The economic costs, the ethical and moral costs of that, disproportionate, again, people of color, people that are poor. I think it's horrific, and I think we have an obligation to quickly address this. But let's have an honest debate. Again, I'm a parent. I understand people's opposition to legalization. I don't want to see my kids use or abuse the drug any more than anybody else. I don't want to see people driving under the influence of the drug. I don't want to see people advertising to our kids. I don't want to see big chain stores opening up on every street corner selling the drug. I get all of that, but at the same time, I don't want to see us try to incarcerate our way out of this war. We have failed for 40 years. We've wasted $1 trillion, and we've wasted hundreds of thousands of people's potential in their lives because they've been caught up, made a mistake in their lives, and never gotten back on track. And so, with respect to the governor, referring to people as potheads, I just think is it's beneath them.
Well, first of all, he's insulting, and I will use that word, insulting a lot of the voters that may want to vote for him. So I don't get, from a political point of view, I don't understand those comments.
Yeah, that's a point as well.
Yeah. So here's my next question. Obviously, you and Governor Brown differ on this particular subject. Does that interfere with your working relationship? And actually, how do you get along with the governor? Because you do have different viewpoints on things.
Yeah, including jobs and the economy.
Yeah.
I've been more aggressive in many ways and a little more pointed about the fact we need to be more intentional and we need to step up our game on economic development. You know, I have enormous respect for him. And just a little bit of background, and very, as briefly as I can make it, my grandfather, who, by the way, was the one who introduced me to Lake County and had a beautiful place up in Russian River. He was at a little resort up in Russian River, and his best friend in the world was Pat Brown, former Governor Pat Brown.
Yep.
And he knew Pat when he was local political, and my grandfather ran Pat Brown's. He literally chaired his campaign for district attorney in San Francisco. Pat was so close to my grandfather that Kathleen Brown, when she was born, was my grandfather was asked to be her godfather. I say that to make this extended point. Jerry Brown was kind enough to appoint in his first term my father to the Superior Court up in Auburn, California, and then in his second term to the California Court of Appeals here in San Francisco. And so I've known the Browns all my life. The Browns have known me since my birth. And so the relationship with Jerry is a complicated one because it goes way back before we were in politics. I served as well with him as a second term. My second term as mayor. Or excuse me, his second term as mayor of Oakland, my first term as mayor of San Francisco. But it doesn't mean we agree or see the world with the same set of eyes on every issue. And so I respect him. We disagree when we disagree. Our relationship is a curious one at best. It's not your traditional political relationship. It's been, candidly, there's been some friction, and you've exampled the marijuana example. I've offered up the opportunity to disagree on some economic development issues, some higher education issues. The cuts I thought were too significant a few years back. But at the end of the day, I think he's a political mastermind. I think he's one of the most gifted politicians I've ever read about, let alone had the privilege of working with. And I think he has done an exceptional job in his first term. And I'm hoping in his second term he can move past, I think, the extraordinary job on solving the issue's number one issue, the state's number one issue, and that's the issue of solvency and balancing the budget, and now focus on greatness, investing in our engines of growth, on education reform, on infrastructure, on research and development, on pushing the envelope, leading nationally on immigration reform, not waiting for Washington, D.C., but have a stronger voice in the national debate. And frankly, I'd love to see him evolve a little bit on drug policy reform and begin to address this rural-urban divide in our state.
Do you think because of the relationship you do have that's also non-political, that you could actually maybe in the second term influence him in changing his direction on these issues?
Yeah, I mean, look, he doesn't need my advice. He doesn't take anyone's advice, even if, with maybe the exception of his wife, Ann, who's remarkably gifted as well. Jerry's, it's very different. Look, everyone, I don't want to talk out of school and get in trouble on your show any more than I get in trouble.
We get ourselves in trouble all the time, so go for it.
But, I don't think anyone up in Sacramento would have a completely different conversation, an honest one at least, with you publicly about their working relationship with Jerry. He's never been, he learns from, but he doesn't necessarily follow others. He takes advice, but he filters it through his own value proposition. His gift is his unique struggle to identify who he is over the course of his entire life. He's a guy that is gifted with this recognition that there's no sort of having made it in life. Success is not a place or a definition, it's a direction. He's constantly learning, he's constantly evolving, and he's constantly critiquing. And as a consequence of that, he's very Socratic, but at the end of the day, he's not necessarily a guy who's going to bring in a team of folks. He's very confident in his own judgment. And so I don't know, even if I had the best relationship, that I would particularly influence him, but I will prod him, happily prod him, because I think he's more capable than even he thinks he is on the issue of jobs, the economy, and higher education, and substantively on leading nationally on drug policy reform and having a profound impact on the lives of millions of people across this country that are desperate for leadership and reform there.
Okay, since we're on the subject of policies and fiscal responsibility, what is your personal or political opinion on Governor Brown's high-speed rail project, which all of a sudden has gotten very, very
now
controversial?
You go there, you're getting me more in trouble.
I'm sorry. Hey, welcome to my life.
It's what we do, sir. It's what we do.
So here's my thing. I think you can all tell I'm one of those guys that has the same conversation in public that I do in private. Years and years ago in 2004, I survived a potential recall and being arrested myself because of some actions I took as mayor as it relates to the issue of marriage equality. And having survived that and really thrived with the idealism of trying to change the world, no matter where you stand in life, even if you don't have the authority to try to change the trajectory. I said to myself, I kid you not, I promised to myself, I said, I want to maintain this authenticity regardless of whether people disagree with me or agree with me. I'm not ideological. I'm open to argument. I'm interested in evidence. I want to compromise. I want to raise the bar, even if I can't go as far as I'd like. I always try to work with the other side. And so I say all that as a precursor to say the following. I was a huge supporter of the high-speed rail. When I was mayor, I was the first mayor in California to go out and endorse it. I campaigned aggressively for it, did fundraisers for it. I was there as one of my last acts as mayor with Ray LaHood, the former Secretary of Transportation, Senator Feinstein, Boxer, at the time Speaker Pelosi. We had a big groundbreaking at the Transbay Terminal in San Francisco, which we announced would be the Grand Central Station on the west coast of the United States and its northern terminus for the high-speed rail. It was a point of real pride for me getting the zoning for that all done, and now it's under construction, and you'll see the largest tower west of the Mississippi actually develop there in the next few years that Salesforce.com will take over. So that's the background. The problem is what I promised and what I promoted back then is not what we're delivering today, not even within a margin of error. The costs have gone through the roof. The ridership numbers have been reduced substantially. The operating subsidy, I think, is a real concern that will cost the general fund. Others disagree with me, but I believe very strongly it's going to cost the general fund, not generate a profit like we were promoting a few years back. We're starting to take money from other very, very, very vulnerable projects, other infrastructure projects, our deferred maintenance in the state, our water system itself in peril of getting, I think, short-shifted because we're losing trust with the voters about our ability to manage large-scale projects and deliver them on time and on budget. So good people can disagree. I would love to have seen a high-speed rail when I was a kid. I mean, this is the technology was born in 1960. I mean, why the United States doesn't have 30 or 40 operating high-speed rail systems is beyond me. But we're at a point in time where I just think this project is derailing, and it's derailing fast, and it could come at a huge cost to many other transit projects up and down the state. I believe infrastructure is a primary motivation for any economic development, recovery, and strategy, and I want to see people working all across our state, but I'm very worried about where this project is today. As much as I would love to see it happen, I'm very concerned about it.
Fair enough. Let's switch direction a little bit here. One of the biggest concerns I think the whole state of California has right now is a word called water. We up here in Northern Cal have some very good water resources. And again, our listeners on our show here are so much more intelligent and informed than I on this subject. But my understanding is a lot of our water gets diverted, and right now a lot of our water is heading down to Southern California. I won't say mainly due to politics and people who have the political contributions. What is your attitude on this? And do you think there's another way to resolve our water issue where the water in Northern Cal can stay up here and Southern Cal can get their own water through maybe other means?
So, it's a good segue from the last conversation about high-speed rail. My fear on high-speed rail is that, and I just noted, there's no bigger issue in the state of California outside the issue of entitlement and debt and balancing our budget, which has been, the challenge of the last decade in the state. The issue of water is the most dominant and vexing challenge we face. You cannot legislate more rainfall. We know that we're experiencing some form of climate disruption, whether you call it climate change or global warming, whatever you want to call it. There's something weird going on with weather patterns all around the world, and every objective observer would fundamentally agree with that. The problem with our state is we actually receive a lot of rainfall. It just tends to happen in the northern part of the state, not enough in the southern part of the state, and our storage capacity is not adequate, and our conveyance system is certainly antiquated. It hasn't been upgraded in literally decades. So this is the issue of our time, and it will be, I'm confident, the number one issue for Governor Brown in his last term, this next term. That said, there are many different proposals on how to address this and how to deal with the challenges of the Delta, the next potential Katrina in the United States, in our own backyard.
I'm sorry, let me interrupt you one second. We have a caller on the other line. We're not going to have time for callers today, so I'm going to go ahead and cut you because there's some feedback coming through, and I don't want to interrupt Lieutenant Governor Newsom. So, caller, I apologize, but we will have to take your call another time.
And so the challenge for us is to reconcile all these competing plans and to recognize that everybody has to compromise a little bit here. That the reason we haven't been able to solve this riddle of how we can upgrade and how we can create some balance in terms of the needs of our agricultural community, our urban needs, northern and southern California, as well as protect vulnerable fish populations and the like, is because everybody's holding on to their trophy on the wall, and everybody's going to have to give a little bit. And this is the great challenge of leadership for the governor. I think we're going to have to be honest and sober about this, because we're at peril of putting not only the economy of California at risk, the environment of the state of California at risk, but we're in peril if we don't address the concerns of the levees in the Delta at a catastrophic event and a loss of life that will be on our watch, where all we have is ourselves to blame. And so while I don't agree currently with the two-tunnel proposal of the governor, I'm not willing to critique it publicly at this stage, because I have every confidence the governor is going to compromise on that proposal and sees the wisdom of the need to compromise. He's staking out a point of view. He's advancing that point of view. I know he's listening to those that have vehement disagreement with him on that point of view, and I certainly I find myself closer to those that currently are in opposition, but I'm by no means going to be critical of what he's trying to do, which is a treacherously difficult task of balancing the needs of all of these different factions.
Okay, excellent.
And by the way, you have a lot at stake up there. I mean, it's this drought, this third year of drought, the acuity of it is not lost on any of us. And you have some of the most pristine and beautiful lakes and rivers in the county, and
the cleanest air in the state and the nation.
In the nation, I mean, don't shortchange yourself. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've been conducting a lot of interviews since election season started, and we've actually had candidates for Assembly 4 District, which represents Napa, Sonoma, Lake County, and all that good stuff. And we had a gentleman on last week that made a very clear statement to us, because we asked him what he he could do if he was elected in Sacramento. And he basically said, I'm going to ad-lib here, so don't hold me to the exact quote. He stated that Governor Brown has been the only sane voice in Sacramento. And he was referring to the legislatures, the assembly people that are making all the rules and laws coming up. He said, without Governor Brown, it would be a disaster right now. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, I don't. For this reason, look, I think the governor's done, as I said, an exceptional job, and is positioned himself quite brilliantly. This goes back to his brilliant instincts, political instincts. Position himself publicly as the adult, quote unquote, in the room. Not a time of life, really a state of mind. He's positioned himself quite well in that respect. But I'm not for a second going to cede recognition to people like Darrell Steinberg, the head of the state senate, or for that matter, John Perez, the speaker, that have had to toe the line with a base of constituency and colleagues in the Assembly and the Senate, which frankly is challenging to hold than even the governor faces with them as leaders. This has been a very difficult time for a lot of folks, and the interest groups up there also did a remarkable job of biting their tongue and taking hits, the likes of which they never, ever could have imagined being so sort of neutral about in the past. So everyone, I think, deserves an enormous amount of credit, and here's why. The conditions. We were just out of smoke and mirrors. There were no more games to be played. Schwarzenegger played a lot of cards that were available to be played. And frankly, I don't think that Brown would have completely avoided playing some of those cards, with all due respect to the governor. He would, of course, say otherwise, but he would have played some of those, perhaps not to the degree that Schwarzenegger did. For example, financing debt, et cetera, to avoid major cuts to welfare and programs for our seniors, for that matter, forcing us to double tuition at the UC and CSUs over the last 5 years. That said, all of that had exhausted itself. There was just simply no other games to be played. Tough choices had to be made. So in many ways, Brown was a beneficiary of circumstance and positioned himself quite well with symbolic plays like removing cell phones, reducing the number of vehicles, not allowing people to travel as much. Small ball, but big political impact. Important things to do. At the end of the day, they didn't amount to much except giving people a sense that, all right, this person's running the state a lot more like I'm running my household. And he understands that as well as anyone, the messaging. And so while I appreciate the sentiment, I think he has done a great job, but I don't think would have been necessarily unique to his status. It was the leadership up in Sacramento across the board.
Well, I agree with you, and it's nice to hear a politician actually understand the nuts and bolts of economics and account. I'm an accountant by trade, so when I hear people saying, "Well, that has a very minimal impact on a budget," I totally disagree, because as you know, as a business owner yourself, the cent savings become dollars, and the dollar savings become hundreds become thousands, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So, cutting back on public use of vehicles and on entertainment and all that good stuff, that's just a small start, but it's a very valuable start. Yeah. So do you think there's more headway we can make within the budget, though, to kind of get rid of the excess?
Yeah, I'm sure some people are listening. Let's start with the lieutenant governor's office. But by the way, it's taken close to 70% cut, 70, for those that are concerned about it.
So you mean you got to go make your own coffee now?
Yeah, no. Luckily, I drink tea. So
fair enough.
It's much easier. I just have to find some hot water, which I get myself into a lot. So I don't.
Oh, we got a lot in common.
Oh, we need to talk.
Including after the last 38 minutes. But no, there's certainly there's always places to find waste and abuse, and I wrote a whole book called Citizenville about one of the greatest drivers of waste in government that is colossal in its magnitude, and that's on IT procurement, information technology procurement. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars a year wasted on old systems that by the time they're actually procured and implemented, no longer even relevant to the world we're living in. I've been very critical of our technological efforts to upgrade our system.
Well, I'll tell you one, as a layperson accessing all the state government websites, California is so far behind the times.
Yeah, and this is the state. I mean, our number one brand is innovation. We have entrepreneurialism running through our veins. This is the birthplace of all of this remarkable change, and yet we are incapable of taking advantage of it. And so I've been a very aggressive critic of that, and I've laid out a prescription that's not just a who's to blame prescription in a book, interestingly, that has been wildly enthusiastically embraced from both the far, far left and the far, far right. I'll give you just two examples from Ralph Nader, forget Bill Clinton and Al Gore that support the book, but also Newt Gingrich on the other side of the political aisle. So I don't know if maybe it's too benign a book, or maybe it's sort of hitting a sweet spot in terms of a new way of thinking about a government not as a large vending machine to dispense services or just providing a state pill for every problem, but looking at government more as a convener, a collaborator, and looking at government, as I posit in the book, as a platform for civic engagement, active civic engagement.
Well, let me ask you a very direct question. Why should I vote for you?
Well, if I haven't convinced you in the last part, I'm in trouble. It's not because I'm good at 30-second sound bites, that's for sure.
Well, you speak very impressively, so.
And we have about 2.5 minutes left.
Thank you very much. Your time's up.
Mine has been up a long time ago.
I'm way past my sell-by date. I get it. Trust me. I think about that a lot. Now, I hope I offer a unique blend of experience. As a private sector person that's created jobs, that has an entrepreneurial energy and entrepreneurial spirit, that believes in government, but also believes in balancing budgets, that believes in progressive values, social values, and will put up my record on that against anybody. At the same time, recognizes that if you're going to be pro-job, you can't be anti-business. That if you want more employees, you need more employers. And that we've got to create conditions in the state to become more entrepreneurial, more competitive, and not just against states like Texas and Nevada, Washington State, and elsewhere, but around the rest of the world. And I hope I've demonstrated commitment not just to talk about problems, but try to solve them and work across the aisle with my colleagues, not just Democrats, but Republicans, putting out an economic development strategy that's detailed and nuanced, putting together a higher education plan, which we just came out with a few weeks back, that's detailed and nuanced, working aggressively to try to reform an agency of which I have some authority in state lands to make it more efficient, more responsive, and coming up with a paradigm platform with my book Citizenville about a different way of engaging citizens and building more trust and having two-way conversations with taxpayers up and down the state. And I hope it positions me well for my last term as lieutenant governor and continuing to try to raise the bar, people's expectation, particularly those in rural communities, that we could do more and we could be better.
Okay. If you're reelected, will you maybe once a quarter, every few months, come back on our show and give us an update on everything?
Yeah, only if you invite me there in studio, because I need more excuses to get up to Lake County.
Oh, please, anytime.
Oh, well, you could have used this one.
But it's true, though. We do have, and I'm not making it up, we've got sort of the busy, crazy Vice President Joe Biden day.
Wow.
He's only a vice president. I mean, come on.
I know. Who's the vice? What does he do? What does Joe Biden?
He makes coffee for the president.
That question.
Well, we are so happy that you have joined us, and we thank you so much for being here in our little tiny radio station here in beautiful downtown Lakeport. And we thank you again, and really are looking forward to seeing how the election goes. And hopefully, after your success, we will have you back on.
I look forward to coming back on. I appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, guys.
All right, Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, folks, thanks again. You have a great day with the Vice President. Gee, he goes from us to the Vice President. Now that's something else.
Do you think Jerry was listening?
I hope so. If he is, he's in trouble. Well, he can watch it online too. Somebody will direct him to
Oh,
it.
absolutely.
I'll have to send them the link so he can share it. Okay,
That was a hell of an interview.
that was really good. I like the guy. I like
That's
the guy.
cool.
That is very cool.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, so we have some announcements to make.
Oh, yes, we do.
Oh, yes, we do.
Yes.
And we can also take a couple of phone calls. Well, we'd like to get out of here by 5 minutes.
Yes, yeah, I
because,
have to be considerate.
Yeah, Sir Frederick Rose is coming up next. So we're not going to take any calls. We're just going to talk to you about what's going on here and with our show. KPFC and the board of KPFC have decided that we have been promoting our business too much here on the radio, and that they feel that we need to be punished for that, in spite of the fact that there are several other programmers that are also doing the same thing. And no one else has been punished, and we've been told it's because we won't apologize. Well, after speaking to our attorney assured us that what we were doing was not considered plugola and was not really an issue, but they chose to make an issue out of it. So they chose to suspend our show for 4 weeks. Not agreeing with the decision, and we went into appeals, and we were never granted the opportunity to speak to the board in person. They took an email that we sent, and they considered that our appeal. And even some of the board members never really got an opportunity to really hear what our side of the story was directly from us. So that being said, we are leaving KPFC. This is our last show, and we will not be back. We will be broadcasting live from our studio in Lower Lake, and we'll be available on our website, lakecomagazine.com, and also you can reach us on our Facebook pages, which is Lake County Magazine and Lake County Magazine Radio Show. We're very sorry that this is how it has come out to be. We love our listeners, and we love the opportunities that we've had to meet everybody and be a part of KPFC, and we would possibly consider coming back down the road, but we'd have to really look at how our position is being taken here, because we just feel like the appreciation of what we do really isn't there. We are a part of the community. We have a video production company that does 90% of its work for free, including KPFZ events, videotaping, and broadcasting those events and broadcasting other things that is related to the studio and also to the community at no charge. We have an online magazine, but we don't make any money off that magazine. It'd be nice if we did, but that isn't what we do. What we do is we are here for the community, we are here for the people of Lake County, and we are now going to be taking that online. We also are building a Roku channel, that's spelled R-O-K-U, and that will be available to everyone in Lake County for free. All you have to do is get the box. It costs about $50, and then you can then stream us and other programs that will be available that will be local programming here in Lake County. We also have some other things that we'll be doing possibly with regarding other media events, and we'll keep you posted on our Facebook pages and also on our website, lakecomagazine.com.
And I'll throw my 2 cents in on this, is that in any business, you always don't get along in a lot of decisions or policies. And at this point in time, we just agree to disagree with KPF's board of directors and staff. From my point of view, there's no true hard feelings in anything. Decisions are being made. Business is business, and I appreciate the opportunity. I have been on the air for 2 years with them. It's a great station, and we just got to move on. And we do have some things we're negotiating on right now that will possibly bring more information, more news to the local area, but Lake County and outside of Lake County through other means. And Terry said we'll keep you posted on that. So I just want to thank all of you listeners for putting up with us, all 1 or 2 of you, and appreciate your loyalty to us.
Okay, and that being said, it's about time for us to slide, because we promised Tony we would not cut into his time anymore. So, and this is the end, so it won't happen again. So we want to thank everybody again and wish you all the best of luck. And please keep in touch with us and check in with us online. And if you need us, you can call us at our office at 701-6416. You can always leave a message there, and we'll catch up with you on the rebound. This is Lake County Magazine signing off.